a few seconds, but when Princess Diana shook hands with a man dying of AIDS in 1987, she saw in a simple gesture that this illness deserved compassion, not fear.
During a visit to a hospital in London, Princess Diana sat down beside a man suffering from AIDS. She didn't wear gloves, she didn't hesitate, she simply reached out and shook his hand. That single moment broke one of the most powerful taboos of our decade. Diana's gesture sent a clear message: HIV could not be transmitted by touch.
After that day, public attitudes began to shift. Politicians, journalists, and health workers started to talk about AIDS not as a moral issue, but as a medical one. In today's program, we are going to connect with different experts that are going to explain us the different campaigns that develop around AIDS in different parts of the world. Julia Lopez will explain us the importance of the campaign Don't Die of Ignorance. Good morning, Julia.
Yes, Marta, here in the United Kingdom, the government launched one of the boldest health campaigns in its history, Don't Die of Ignorance, in 1987. Let's discover it. At a time when fear and misinformation were spreading faster than the virus itself, the government decided that the best defense was education. Leaflets were delivered to 23 million homes, warning that AIDS is not prejudice. It can kill anyone. Television adverts showed tombstones and volcanic ash, as actor John Hurt declared in a chilling voice.
It is a deadly disease and there is no known cure. The virus...
The message was clear and terrifying. The campaign's creators admitted they wanted to scare people, believing that information was the only vaccine available. But not everyone approved. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher strongly opposed the campaign's explicit tone. In her handwritten notes, she asked, "Do we really need the section on risky sex?" and worried that teenagers might learn practices they never knew existed. She feared that open discussions about homosexuality and condom use would corrupt moral values. Her stance resurfaced a year later with Section 28, the law banning any promotion of homosexuality in schools. Still, despite her resistance, the campaign went ahead. And it worked. It saved lives and forced Britain to confront subjects it had long avoided: sex, risk, and responsibility. Yet, fear could only go so far. In 1991, Freddie Mercury, one of the world's greatest rock icons, publicly announced he had AIDS, just a day before his death. His honesty and the Freddie Mercury tribute concert that followed in 1992 turned fear into empathy and grief into action. The Don't Die of Ignorance campaign may have protected the public, but it also defined an era through fear. Only later, through figures like Freddie Mercury, did that fear begin to give way to understanding.
Good evening. We look back tonight at a devastating chapter in American history, the AIDS epidemic of the mid-1980s, emerging not just as a medical catastrophe, but as a profound crisis of social neglect and systemic oppression. The silent plague and social stigma. The early 1980s were marked by widespread fear, misinformation, and strong stigma, targeting those diagnosed with HIV for the homosexual community, already struggling against marginalization. The virus became a terrifying plague, forcing individuals to confront their vulnerability and the harsh systems they inhabited, while community organizations mobilized to provide care and research. The federal government's response to the rising death toll was critically one profound delay. The Reagan administration, an excruciating silence, This is where the political context became sustained on the national conscience. Despite the initial cases emerging in 1981, the Reagan administration's official response was excruciatingly silent for the first 5 years of the epidemic. President Ronald Reagan did not publicly mention the word AIDS until 1987, nearly 6 years after the first reports, and only after more than 20,000 Americans had already died. Historians argue that this calculated inaction effectively prioritized political expediency over American public health, particularly as the disease was initially framed as an affliction affecting only marginal groups. This lack of an appropriate federal response exacerbated the humanitarian crisis, enabling fear to supersede rational public policy and deepening the national tragedy. The lasting scars. The legacy of this failure, as explored in cultural commentaries of the time, is the image of a nation that failed its most vulnerable citizens. It demonstrated how systemic neglect can be just as deadly as the disease itself. For many, the crisis remains a definitive example of how quickly social marginalization can translate into the denial of essential human rights.
Thank you, Manu. Now we need to look back a decade to Australia's unforgettable and often criticized effort to shock the nation into awareness, the 1987 Grim Reaper television commercial. The Australian government, facing a rapidly spreading epidemic, made a calculated decision. They would bypass community-led messaging and go straight to the general public with a terrifying high production campaign that aimed to leave no doubt about the severity of AIDS. The 60-second ad was a dark cinematic allegory. People from all walks of life, men, women, children, were lined up like a bowling pins in a smoky foreboding alley. The narrator's chilling voice warned that AIDS could kill more Australians at World War II if left unchecked. Then, a hooded Grim Reaper figure rolls the ball, scaring the human beings. The message was clear. Everyone was at risk. Now, in terms of sheer impact, the campaign was an immediate blinding success. AIDS was instantly the topic of every dinner table. Calls to the National AIDS Hotline surged by an incredible 327% in the first month, and they achieved their primary goal of making HIV a threat to all Australians, securing vital political funding from wider public health initiatives like the World Leading Needle and Syringe programs. However, the backlash was just as immediate and fierce. Media critics and the public condemned the ad as pure scaremongering, creating mass hysteria and fueling harmful panic that AIDS could be transmitted through casual contact, which was untrue. But the greatest cost was to the community already hard to hit. For people living with HIV and the LGBTQ+ community, the ad tragically cemented the Grim Reaper as a figure synonymous with gay men. It worsened stigma, marginalization, and sadly increased instances of hatred, scapegoating them as the spreaders of the disease. The campaign was cut short after just 3 weeks due to the controversy, and the Grim Reaper stands as the most dramatic illustration of the 80s approach. Fear works. But the lasting lesson which shaped the educational approach to the 90s is that fear comes at a terrible price to the vulnerable communities already bearing the epidemic's heaviest burden. Back to Candila.
Thank you, Alba. While governments hesitated and feared something extraordinary was happening across the Atlantic Ocean, a new movement was rising in New York. It was called the ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. By 1987, AIDS have already claimed tens of thousands of lives of innocent people, but political silence and social stigma were still stronger than compassion.
ACT UP was formed by people living with HIV and their allies, people who were tired of being ignored. Their message was simple and urgent: silence equals death. The phrase came with a symbol, the pink triangle. It was once used by the Nazis to mark gay men in concentration camps. ACT UP turned it upside down, reclaiming it as a sign of resistance.
It meant that silence from governments, the media, and even families was deadly. They took their protests to the streets, outside hospitals, drug companies, and government buildings. In what they called die-ins, activists lay motionless on the ground to represent the thousands who had already died because of inaction. Their voices echoed through the streets, claiming, "Act up! Fight back! Fight AIDS!" Artists joined the movement too. Keith Haring painted powerful symbols of love and survival. David Bognarovics turned anger into haunting art, and the collective Ren Fury covered city walls with posters reading, "Kissing doesn't kill, greed and indifference do." Art became activism, and visibility became survival. Unlike the fear-based government campaigns of the time, ACT UP's message was about empowerment and dignity. They demanded access to treatment, education, and compassion, and their protests helped change public attitudes and even government policies. For many, silence equals death wasn't just a slogan, it was a call to live, to speak, and to fight back. From activism to art, they turned grief into resistance, and resistance into hope. Reporting on the legacy of ACT UP, I'm Candela. Back to you in the studio, Marta.
Thank you to all the experts that have explained us today the importance of AIDS visibility. As we have seen in this program, the response to AIDS has taken many forms, from government warnings and moral panic to music, protest, and acts of courage. Today, this message matters more than ever. AIDS is not only a medical crisis, it is a human one.